My Mental Health Story, Part 1, Adolescence and its Agony, 2016 to 2019. My 16 to 19-year-old self. Chapter 1, 2016, The Slow Descent. We can't erase our demons. We only learn to live above them. At 16, I tried to run away from it all. My family, my friends, and my expectations that overwhelmed me. Nothing worked. For 1,000 days and nights, I had to face my demons face to face. This is the story of surviving my darkest years of my life, from 16 to 19. Through suicide attempts, breakdowns, and hospital stays, I fought to reclaim myself. This is my story of how I confronted my deepest fears and slowly healed, step by step, through the agony and confusion of adolescence. In 2016, I entered my senior high school year. I became too focused on my studies because my mind was laser focused on the HSC. The HSC is just a high school certificate, while I also chose to be an ATAR student. ATAR is basically a national ranking in Australia based on the HSC exam results. The higher the ATAR, the more likely you are to enter prestigious universities. Unknowingly, I was slowly becoming a perfectionist. It got to the point where I would isolate myself and just study and do assignments for hours on end. I would disregard my social life altogether, as I would spend my recess and lunch mainly in the school library instead of eating or socializing with my friends and classmates. A large amount of pressure was placed upon myself to succeed. This feeling weighed on me to the point where I was overwhelmed. At the time, I wasn't vocal about my feelings or what went through my head, so I struggled in silence. I tried to mask my overwhelming sadness, but that didn't work. Yet, there was never pressure from my family like my parents pressuring me to succeed with ATAR or HSC for that matter. As a matter of fact, my father said it was my choice to be an ATAR student. I personally regret making this decision. It got to the point where I had suicidal ideation. I told my best friend Jim while during lunch that I was going to commit suicide the next morning. The next morning, I didn't go to school since I attempted to commit suicide, but I started crying and even told my mother what had happened, as I was planning to self-harm and bleed to death. Although I never self-harmed, I had suicidal ideations. During this time, I tried to run away from home, but I ended up coming back. Not to mention, I did something spiritually wrong at the time. Bear in mind, I'm not religious, but I did go to a Catholic school and I am spiritual to say the least. Nevertheless, I prayed to the devil that if he appeared in my dream, that meant my body is dead and I will serve him as his servant. In other words, if I died in my sleep, the devil would take my soul, and I would end my miserable life through spiritual suicide. Of course, nothing happened. He never appeared. However, it's worth mentioning that over the next course of years, I had many nightmares and dreams of demons and the devil himself. In the social context of my 16-year-old self, I went along with my friends and classmates just fine. I was never bullied during this grade, since most classmates had matured. Chapter 2, 2017, The Darkest Year. As the days and weeks passed, things just seemed to get worse. I remember I was gone for a whole school term. Specifically during term 2 of 2017, 12th grade. This is because of a small email I received along with every student in my year group before we entered term 2, stating the fact that if you don't get the passing mark or the average mark on the exams and assignments, you get a letter sent home about not being able to finish the HSC. Of course, I was anxious and depressed when I read this email at the time, since my mental health was deteriorating at an accelerating pace. On Wednesday, 26th of April 2017, term 2 of 2017 started. I was thinking of skipping school that day, but my parents drove me to school. I couldn't stand the pressure in geography because there's so much content in this class and I'm so depressed inside because of the teacher's pressure. I had double period of my least favorite class, geography, because I felt so much pressure from my geography teacher. This pressure just kept piling on, mainly from this geography class and its teacher, since she was adamant on forcing us to pass. The idea of failing left me haunted and pressured me to the point where I was wanted to give up entirely. That was the only day I went to school before 3 weeks passed with me absent from school during those 3 weeks. May 2017. On week 4 of term 2 2017, 15th of May, I went to school as a gradual return, and I was only there in periods 3 and 4 because I was only to be at school for 2 periods. It was double maths. The first period was fine. The second period wasn't so much. I was anxious about my classmates around me and the teacher in front of me. I was really depressed as well. The next day, on Tuesday, 16th of May 2017, I was supposed to go to school with a geography excursion. There was also double multimedia at school for periods 3 and 4. Before I left the house, I told my mother I'm not going to school. I did exactly that. Instead of going to school, I went to a nearby park and drank Coke. I got home and my mom wasn't home, and I decided to write an email to the visual arts teacher, who is also my link teacher. A link teacher is like a teacher who supports students to improve the school experience. I wrote 7 scenarios to my visual arts or link teacher about what was going to happen if I came to school the next day in this email I was writing. The 7 scenarios were: number 1, murdering or burning a teacher with a knife or a flammable chemical. Number 2, hammering the principal or assistant principal. Number 3, burning the Board of Studies building or the NESA, aka New South Wales Education Standards building. Number 4, renegotiate with the school and isolate myself in a classroom or library for the rest of the day, and I'll email the teacher or still help during recess and lunch so I can finish my HC and disregard HR. Number 5, renegotiate with the assistant principal or the school to help me get a job or a traineeship or apprenticeship or a job that provides on-the-job training. Number 6, run away from my family and friends and beg as a homeless person and bring my phone until the school renegotiates. Or number 7, run away from my family and friends and beg as a homeless person until I starve myself to death. On Wednesday, the 17th of May, week 4 of term 2, 2017, I was admitted into Concord Hospital's psychiatric ward in the Mackay unit, which was this HDU or high dependency unit. It's a ward for men who have severe mental illness. In the psych ward, we have 3 meal times: breakfast, lunch, and dinner, as we would get a tray and collect food from the canteen, similar to a prison as I've seen in the movies. I remember I spoke with one of the psychiatrists in the Mackay unit who concluded that I was to be moved to another ward since I didn't experience any hallucinations. I remember vaguely during one night in this ward, someone screamed while I was trying to sleep. Surprisingly, I fell asleep like a log. By Friday, 19th of May 2017, I was transferred to the Manning unit. There were fewer patients in Mackay, while Manning had more patients since it was also filled with male and female patients. The Manning unit was less daunting than the Mackay unit. However, I remember one time with one of my co-patients, he tried to commit suicide in his room as he tried to hang himself with loose clothing. This was during the night when most people were asleep. I couldn't sleep properly that night, but I did eventually fall asleep afterwards. It was depressing to say the least. I remember my co-patient said that this place felt like a detention center. Looking at the bright side of things, my favorite thing to do in the Manning unit was to play around with the piano in the activity rooms or do the activities with the occupational therapist. When the occupational therapist visited us, we did activities like progressive muscle relaxation, DIY handspray, etc. June 2017. On Monday, the 5th of June 2017, I was transferred to Sydney Children's Hospital in Randwick. I was transferred to the Saunders Child and Adolescent Unit, which was this psych ward for preteens and teens. I noticed there were fewer patients. There's a maximum of 8 patients compared to the previous ward. In comparison, in Concord Hospital, I was the youngest there because I was 17 at the time, mixed with adults ranging from 20 years old to over 60 years old in Concord Hospital's psychiatric wards. It made me realize I wasn't supposed to be in the psych ward with the adults in Manning unit, let alone Mackay unit, but at the same time, this fact never bothered me as much. But for my advice to others, a HDU or high dependency unit is a very daunting experience for most people because it is for people who have severe mental illness with intrusive thoughts to self-harm or harm. Nevertheless, the Saunders Child and Adolescent unit was less daunting compared to both Mackay and Manning. It was quite the contrast. However, every time a patient like me entered the ward in Saunders' unit, we had to wear a robe as the nurses checked our clothes and bodies if we had any weapons or loose clothing to prevent harm or self-harm. This made me feel uncomfortable, but I understood it was for safety reasons for everyone. On Wednesday, the 14th of June 2017, I was discharged from the Saunders unit of Sydney Children's Hospital at 12:30 p.m. I spent a total of 29 days in a psychiatric ward. 20 being in Concord Hospital, and the last 9 days were in Sydney Children's Hospital. It's also worth mentioning that I journaled during my stay at the psychiatric wards on pieces of paper and placed them inside a folder. This journal helped me keep track of how long I've been in there and what happened over the course of my stay, which reduced my mental and emotional load on a piece of paper. June to November 2017. I remember going back to school. Things went slightly smoother and better than before, to say the least. I remember I made a video on my old YouTube channel explaining why I was gone from school for term 2. A classmate of mine found my video and he felt sorry for me because of what I went through. Then the principal found out one day as he called me on my home phone and wanted me to delete the video. Otherwise, I would be expelled if I didn't delete it from YouTube. I eventually deleted the video. However, what happened next was disingenuous by the principal. He assembled my whole cohort of the grade 12 students and asked which students had seen the video. The reason the principal wanted me to delete the video is because of the violent thoughts I expressed during the video, which were just my intrusive thoughts. Whether that was for the school's sake or my sake is open for debate, but I moved on from it. I remember when that day happened. I was separated from the assembly and was with my visual arts or link teacher putting my artwork away while the principal spoke behind my back. My best friend Jimbo felt bad for me because people might think I'm crazy or something or pity me, but I couldn't care less. I'm not the type who's willing to argue my opinions for the sake of closure. At the end of my year 12 school year, around November 2017, I completed some of the exams for my HSC, such as visual arts and general maths. I also decided not to complete the geography exam because my case manager from my medical team said that I can exempt myself from it as long as I provide a medical certificate. Here's a photo of me and my artworks from my year 12 visual arts class, since it was one of the subjects with major projects. I also remember I chose not to go to the year 12 formal. I just didn't feel like it at the time, although my best friend Jim did. I was also given this special award. Only a select few were given this award statewide in Catholic schools because I endured mental illness, but I wasn't present at the awarding ceremony. I couldn't care less about some award. It didn't mean much to me, but I appreciate their effort to support and commend me, especially for what I went through. The grades before 11th and 12th grade were filled with more joy and laughter, like from 7th to 10th grade, since I was also a content creator in high school, since I had my own YouTube channel before the internet culture eventually exploded with content creators and influencers in the following years. Here's a clip from my year 12 major project for multimedia with me and my best friend Jumo recording videos from my project. November to December 2017. Looking back on my senior high school years, I felt miserable and guilty that I left my best friend Jimwell in high school alone for a large chunk of senior high school years because I became mentally ill, as Jimwell and I have been friends since 2012, since 7th grade. But at the same time, I couldn't help myself at the time. The pressure eventually broke me as my mental health deteriorated. Reflecting on my younger self, I would tell him, "It's okay to fail. Failure is part of life. It doesn't mean it's the end of the world. Don't fall into perfectionism, because not everything is in your control. Things like the weather, traffic, or life's unexpected turns will always remind you of that. Some of the greatest lessons you'll ever learn will come through the pain and failures you didn't want, but needed." To younger viewers, I want to say this. A piece of paper like the HSC or the higher school certificate doesn't define your worth, your intelligence, or your potential. If you want to go to university, that's fine, but prepare yourself for both the educational demands and the financial reality. And if you don't get the HSC, that's not the end of your path. There are always alternative routes into higher education and into life. Most importantly, don't overthink and don't catastrophize. A single setback doesn't mean your story is over. It simply means you're still in the middle of writing it. Moving on back to my story, I remember my oldest brother was worried about me, whether I couldn't make it to his wedding because I had the HSC exams. But as the days passed, I completed some of the exams, and I was able to go to his wedding in the Philippines at both November 2017 at Palawan, Philippines, and enjoy the rest of my Philippine vacation in Cebu, Philippines in December. My immediate family and I went to the Philippines since it was my oldest brother's wedding. We first stayed in Palawan for a week at my oldest brother's father's-in-law's hotel, and then the remaining 3 weeks we were in Cebu City. My cousins, uncles, and aunties also went to the wedding in Philippines, some from Australia and the rest from the Philippines. It was also the first time for me and my family to be at my uncle's new house in the Philippines in Talisay, Cebu City. It's inside this subdivision that is separate from the slums. It was a good family experience overall since my cousins, uncles, and auntie from Australia slept in the same house as us, since the house was 2 stories high. During my time spent in the Philippines, it made me value my family and I learned to be grateful, as most of my relatives in the Philippines lived in poverty as they lived in the slums. Around mid-December 2017, during one night in the Philippines, I had a dream. It was all dark and I couldn't see anything, and I could feel the sensations that I'm having sex or sexual acts with succubi or three female sex demons, and one of them whispered to my left ear saying, "There's no turning back." This dream didn't really bother me at the time. However, as you will see years from this point forward, I will experience a series of dreams and nightmares about demons and the devil. It is also worth mentioning here that I made a couple of internet friends during this period. One of them was May, who was from Cebu City, Philippines. I met her on Omegle back in 2016, and I also met another internet friend, Jill. I met her around 23rd December 2017. They were both from the Philippines, and they both spoke my native language, Cebuano or Bisaya. It was another way to socialize, connect, and make friends differently. As we were friends in an online space such as the social media app Facebook, chatting with my internet friends who spoke Cebuano Bisaya meant that I practiced my fluency more in terms of my native language. They provided love, help, and support when my friends in real life, like Jimwa, were unavailable sometimes. In terms of schizophrenia, the only time I had a hallucination during high school was sometime in 2017. It was nighttime, and I thought I saw a 6 foot lady wearing a white dress, pale skin, and long black hair. But when I looked again, it was just the curtains in the dining room. Chapter 3, 2018. Love in the Midst of Chaos. Early to mid 2018. In 2018, I was 18 years old and legally an adult now. I spent most of 2018 trying to investigate my HSC results. I went to see my former year coordinator first about this because it eventually became the school principal's duty to follow up on what happened to my HSC results, as they called the NESA, New South Wales Education Standards Authority, formerly known as Board of Studies. During this time, I was still with the medical team, but instead of Camperdown Adolescent Mental Health Team, I was transferred to the Croydon Mental Health Team. Also, in 2018, I reunited with a friend from primary school, whose name was Amato. Along with him was his female friend, Jessica. Later that year, Jimwell and I unfriended Amato because Amato vomited in my room as he got drunk, and I was disappointed and upset, and so were my parents, since they seemed like a bad influence, as they had known someone who was involved in crime. Here are a few clips of Amato and Jessica before Jimwell and I unfriended them months later. Mid 2018, I had a series of minor hallucinations, ranging from a black puppy at a train station, but it was just the ground. Furthermore, in the same month, I thought I saw a turquoise mermaid on the sofa, but it was just a pillow. It was in the lounge room where it was dark, and the only light was in the kitchen since it was at night. I had no symptoms, and I felt confused and surprised. October 2018. On October 18th, 2018, I confessed my love to one of my internet friends, Jill, and we became lovers, but it was an LDR, or a long distance relationship. She was my first girlfriend, albeit through online means. We became lovers since we've been having voice calls and video calls almost every day since we met at the beginning of the year. Our love only grew stronger from here on. I remember the day I confessed my love to her, and she was smiling and flattered to hear it from me. November 2018. It was around November 2018 I went with my mother, and the principal notified me about the finality of my HSC results. Unfortunately, I was unable to receive the final HSC result despite receiving grades and results for the other exams I participated in. Nessa's reason for this was the fact that I did not see my case manager in person for the medical certificate to exempt myself from the geography exam. Nevertheless, this didn't really bother me as much, but it was the fact that it took them almost a whole year for Nessa to finalize this decision. I wasted a whole year waiting for this. After I received the news from my former high school principal about my HSC results in November, I applied and became a participant in a local job agency in a nearby suburb, Campsie, and this job agency was called People Plus, through the support of my case manager at the time. At one point in 2018, I had a dream where I was in third person point of view. Maybe I was dead and looking at my corpse, and I saw a demon eat my heart from my corpse. This nightmare really frightened me at the time. I knew it was a dream, but it was disturbing to witness your own body being devoured in a dream nonetheless. Chapter 4, 2019. First job and first time in college. Early to mid 2019. In 2019, I was 19 years old. I applied for this youth employment program where I landed a job interview with the help of my job agency with this company called SSI, which stands for Settlement Services International. I remember I went to the city for the job interview and I was 4 hours early with near formal attire. Here's a photo I took before I went to the city to attend my job interview on that day. I worked for the discount grocery store named Staples Bag in Campsie as a grocery store assistant, since Staples Bag was the child organization of SSI. I worked there for 3 months from late February to May 2019. Additionally, while I was working at Staples Bag, I completed a Certificate 3 in Business through a registered training organization known as Alfie, as I completed this course online via the job agency People Plus. Dream log. Monday, 24th of June 2019. I had a dream where I was in a large house, possibly 2 or 3 stories high. I was attacked by these invisible demons or monsters, and I was fist fighting them until I got knocked out by one or some of them. I woke up in the dream, and I knew it was a dream when I saw the shadows of these demons and monsters when I was lying in the bed of this house. Lying down and turning my head to the left and looking at the top left corner of this room in this house. I then woke up and went inside this huge room where the ceiling reached probably 6 meters high, and I was fighting something flying or tall with my crossbow. I got knocked out, and I was in this room with robots, human-machine hybrids, and animal humanoid monsters, saying it's alright, but then I noticed something was off. So I shot them with these special pistols I had, flowing with purple energy of some sort, and sent them to another dimension. I finally went outside with a person on a spaceship, and we were in the desert. He then gave me armor to protect me and also something, perhaps a device to create a barrier that showed a circle on the ground every time I walked with this armor or this device. It would shield me from these demons, monsters of this world. Dream log. Tuesday, 30th of July, 2019. I had a dream. I saw a salt paper between the devil and me. He had 6 and I had 72. He said, "You win this time, Neil." August 2019. Later that year, around in August, I applied and was enrolled on a TAFE course, Certificate 3 in Library and Information Services. That's where I also met my new friends Marvin and Rowena. It was also my first time at a TAFE or a vocational college since I couldn't afford university. Here's a photo of me and my friend Marvin. In 2019, I also had a series of hallucinations, one of which when I thought I saw a tall homeless man wearing a hat lying down in the window at my work. When I looked again, there was nothing. On another occasion, I saw a shadowy figure crouching or squatting with claws for its feet in my younger brother's unlit room as I passed by the corridor. When I passed by again, it was just a bag and school shoes. Months later, I thought I saw a child wearing a white gown near the stairs adjacent to my older cousin's room at my uncle's house. When I looked back, there was nothing. However, there was a book I saw that was real, and it was a Harry Potter book titled The Cursed Child. The first auditory hallucination in 2019 was when I thought someone called my name twice throughout the whole workday, but it was no one. While in the same location I was working in the grocery store, I thought I saw duplicates of my workmate at work, but then when I looked back, there was only one. Another hallucination was when I was at TAFE or vocational college and I saw a figure approaching me. He wore a white and gold robe. He was a wizard. He was walking down the corridor when I was inside my TAFE building for a glimpse. I didn't feel scared, just surprised. He was also holding a white staff and was wearing a hood. Underneath it, faceless. By the end of 2019, I thought I was getting better and ready to leave the worst years behind as I confronted high school, the weight of adolescence and the confusion of becoming an adult for the first time. I was scared, but I was standing. What I didn't expect was that the next chapter of my life would challenge me in ways I never expected. A new decade was about to begin, and with it, a global pandemic that would turn the world on its head. In 2020, I found myself caught between isolation and connection, experiencing my first Valentine's Day with a long-distance girlfriend, while also befriending people through apps like SpeakRandom and Discord. At this point, I thought maybe things would start to improve, but life has a way of changing things quickly. In 2021, I was heartbroken and healing as I lost someone dear to my heart. However, I did find comfort in late-night gaming sessions with my brothers and cousins. And then came 2022, a year that nearly broke me again. I relapsed with mental illness. I had religious psychosis symptoms and another hospital stay. 31 days, which was a strong reminder that recovery is never a straight line. Part 2 of my mental health story, 2020 to 2022, is about survival in a world that felt like it was ending. It's about connection in the midst of isolation, heartbreak in the midst of healing, and relapse in the midst of recovery. And it all begins with a simple reminder to myself: take it easy. The world's not gonna end tomorrow.